This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Nanette Bartow here, handwriting examiner, continuing this week with Sandy Betts. We're going to be bringing her on in a couple minutes. I just want to cover up a comment that was made on YouTube last week in regards to Jack and the Zodiac Killer, the untold story. This seems to be a hot topic. It's getting a lot of reviews. A lot of people are actually checking in and watching the video. Some love it. Some still want to, deny that Jack has any ability to be the Zodiac. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about is one of these comments that somebody had placed who said schlock. And I'm not sure which schlock is. Might mean that they are from, we can put the presentation up so people can see what that is. But up here in the corner, it says schlock, S-C-H-L-O-C-K. I don't know if that is some foreign word of phooey or bamboozle or whatever it is, but he says lots of speculation, no hard evidence ties Jack Terrence to the case. My response was, except for that whopping handwriting identification made on every letter of the alphabet, both capital and lowercase, which includes numbers, symbols, punctuation, linguistics, graphoanalysis. He was in the Navy and Air Force, was a ham radio operator that knew about codes and ciphers, was a hunter that bisected small game, had all types of guns mentioned in the murders and many knives, every car witnessed, eaten bond paper found in his belongings, same style writing utensil used by the Zodiac, the hood found in the PA system, the identical look to both known composites. And he says on the video, I haven't cut anyone's throat in a while. I got tired of doing it. Sure, no evidence at all. I'm super glad that he's paying attention to what's being shown here, but thank you just the same for your participation. His response then was, number one, handwriting analysis is not an exact science, even less so when examined printed letters and not cursive handwriting. I don't know where he gets his evidence at or where he gets his information from that suggests this, but he is very, very much wrong. Many other proposed suspects also claim handwriting matches. I don't know that many other do. I think one or two attempted to make that I know of. Every man of that era who wore glasses and had short hair looked like composite sketches of the Zodiac. Not true. Again, we've looked at many of these composites compared to many of these suspects, and I think there was one that had some similarities. Even Alan Luden, host of TV's Password, looked like the Zodiac. I don't know who that is, but also see the dozen other suspects proposed as Zodiac. They all resemble the sketch. Not really. It was a common look, he says. Again, not really. Being in the Navy and Air Force, operating a ham radio, and having knives in your home does not prove you are the Zodiac, or thousands of people would have been arrested. I completely agree. It's when you put it all into conjunction, or when you put it all together with the handwriting is really where that comes into play. He said there's no chain of custody of the alleged hood found in the speaker. There couldn't have been a chain of custody of this hood until it was found. And then that chain of custody went to the FBI. He says, when was this hood found and who found it? So clearly he's not watching the Hit the Road Jack podcasts, or he would have these answers. He says anyone can make up a story about finding a hood when they are trying to sell a book or a movie. Well, Dennis wasn't trying to sell a book or a movie. And the Zodiac did not cut the throat of any victim. Again, he does not know very much about the Zodiac, if he believes so, because it is notoriously thought that the Sherry Jo Bates is a murder that was committed by the Zodiac Killer, as he protested in later letters. And he, in fact, cut Sherry Jo Bates' throat. So at that, I'm not going to spend much more time on trying to discount his beliefs, because clearly he's not following what I've been throwing out there. And I just deferred him to the podcast so he could look for himself. today I want to welcome on Sandy Betts, our special guest. Hi there, Sandy.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing? Are we there? Perfect. All right. So meanwhile, what I will do is give you just a little bit of background. Sandy Betts was around during the era of the Zodiac killings. She has done a lot of research in these cases. She's talked to some of the major players in these cases, like investigator Tashi. She's worked with many of the people who have researched or investigated these cases. She's spoke to handwriting experts. She has spoke to different investigative departments from the Vallejo PD, from San Francisco, from Napa. She has literally been on top of this case since day one because she had been being stalked by some individuals as early as March of 1968. And we are going to talk about some of those individuals and her beliefs about their culpability in this particular case and what she had going on throughout this time frame, which happens to be some extremely strange coincidences and some scary stuff that happened to her during this time frame. Basically, she worked at the Coronado Inn in Vallejo, and she was a waitress or bartender there, but that is how she came into contact with Darlene Ferrin. To my knowledge, and as she's expressed to me, she did not know Darlene personally, but she knew of her because Darlene frequented the Coronado Inn, as well as Sandy Betts had frequented the International House of Pancakes, which is where Darlene Ferrin worked. She is working on getting back into the studio at this point, and hopefully we have her back with us with a good connection here shortly. Another thing that she had in common with Darlene Ferrin is that she dated a cop for 5 years that had a fling with Darlene, and evidently Darlene was infatuated with that cop and still interested. So we're going to hopefully hear a little bit about that story. Let's see. She dated another gentleman who she believed took her to Darlene's house, which she's going to tell us some about that and talk about these particular individuals who stalked her, making it appear as though that they were possibly the Zodiac. But we will have to see if she comes back in first. So, I guess I can always go. Let's go into some articles in regards to Pam Huckabee, which is Darlene Ferrin's sister.
Different things to see.
Okay, look. Oh, so you've been muted. You're going to be on my phone now. We can see you, and we're going to hear you from my phone.
Okay, so shall I just leave my phone on?
Yep, just let's talk through the phone. That'll work.
Oh, good. All right, fine. That's fine.
All right, so basically, we have you in Napa in 1969, correct?
Yes.
And then we had you working at the Coronado Inn in Vallejo.
I worked actually several clubs in Vallejo.
Okay. But at the time that the murder of Darlene Ferrin, you were working at the Coronado Inn, correct?
Yes. I worked there and also Flamingo Joe's and the Melody Lounge.
So you had a few jobs at that point in time, but you found that Darlene Ferrin frequented all of them or just the Coronado Inn?
I knew that she went to the Coronado Inn.
Gotcha. So also when did you realize that you were being stalked by someone?
One of the nights, there's a delay. It's driving me crazy. Okay. I was driving home and, well, first of all, I need to back up. I was at the Flamingo Joe's. I had to go to another club where I worked and picked up a check. And when I walked in, I saw, oh my gosh, this delay is really, it's so hard. But I saw some guys inside the club and sat down and had a drink with them. They walked me out to my car. and my car wouldn't start. So I told them, I said, look under my hood and see if my coil wire's all right. They said, are you psychic or something? Your coil wire's gone. So they stole one out of another car. Put it in my car. Yeah. And I started driving home, and I noticed that there was somebody behind me. I tried to lose him when I turned right on Navari, not Navari, Imola.
All right.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right. So
So
you were
shall I
talking
turn off
about
the phone?
you were talking about your car being manipulated and them obtaining you a coil to fix your car.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And
Now, when did that happen?
that happened in 1969, probably around March. The weather was kind of cold, and I checked to see what the weather was like in March, and there were some days that it was fairly cold, because once I thought I got away from the guy, I turned out my lights as I made a left turn. I was going so fast I couldn't turn down the Bari Street. I had to go one more block. So I went one more block, slowed up, came around the corner with my lights off. He didn't see me. He was parked across the street from my house, and he was looking at my driveway like, where the heck is she? When I pulled up right on top of him, I mean, I was like maybe 3.5 feet away from his face when he saw me, and he contorted his face in a real scary way. I don't know if he contorted it so that I wouldn't be able to recognize him. I don't know. But it was so scary that I thought, because I had a divorce not too long before that it was my ex-husband who possibly hired a hitman to knock me off so that he wouldn't have to pay any child support. That's what I thought, because I mean, as far as I knew, there wasn't any Zodiac following me. And so,
but this was obviously after the death of the first two Lover Lane killings. March of 69 is after the first two sets of murders.
March, yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was March. I'm very sure it was March 69. I had a baby and just returned back to work around March.
Okay.
And that's when he followed me.
So that's basically when you started getting this scare of this stalker that was following you around.
Right. And so I knew better than to try to get out of my car and run for my front door. I kept on going back down towards Saskville. And there was 2 police officers parked at the gas station on the corner of Imola and Saskville. So I pulled into that gas station. They were 2 separate cops in 2 different cars. So I pulled up and got out, walked over to them, and I told them, I said, oh, look, I just got followed by some guy all the way from Vallejo. And as I'm talking to them, he crosses the street behind the gas station. There was a place called the Travel Lodge. It was an all-night, like, pancake restaurant type thing that was open all night. And he pulled into that parking lot, which there was only one entrance in and one entrance out. And I pointed at him. He saw me talking to the cops. And one officer said, hey, Joe, you go check the guy out, and I'll make sure she gets home safely. So that's what happened. The cop followed me home, made sure I got home safely. And as far as I knew, the other officer had to have spoken to this guy. So, no, March was before July.
Yeah, but you're talking 69. 68 is when the murders began. Right.
But this was 1969. This was March of 69. And so it was shortly after that I saw in the newspaper where Mike Mageau gave a description of the shooter's car. The shooter's car matched the car that had followed me. So right away, I called up Napa PD and I said, look, there should be a report, because I spoke to 2 officers, not very long ago, about a man that followed me in a car just like what the victim who was shot at Blue Rock Springs had described. So I said, maybe you could find that report. and there should be a name because the officer spoke to someone. And she looked and she found one report where it said that he followed me home, made sure I got home okay. And of course, back then I didn't realize when there's two officers in two separate cars, there's two separate reports.
Correct.
So she only looked at the one report where I'm sure there was probably a second one, but she didn't know that. And I didn't think to mention, that there should have been another one because I was really ignorant about that kind of thing back then. So there was that. I'm sure the guy talked to him, got his name and everything. And it was in a report, but they only keep things for like 10 years. And I'm thinking, do they look at the things that they destroy after, when they're getting rid of things? Do they look at them before they actually delete them? Or you would think that they would have seen, well, here's a woman that got followed right around the time of the Zodiac shooting.
I'm not so sure so much on that. I mean, it's not like the people who are housing or holding that information are cognitive of, looking back at incidences that occurred previous to the sighting of that vehicle. You know what I'm saying? It's not
Right.
it's not like they're a computer program that can match sources and go, hey, by the way, this sounds similar. So
Right.
it doesn't surprise me that they weren't aware of that, but not knowing when you had indicated that the cop had spoken to the other guy, that should have been the report she should have looked for, not the one that drove you
Yes.
home, because that's who
Yes.
you're looking for, is that individual that the cop spoke to.
Right.
I'm going to try and move through some of this stuff a little bit quick,
Sure.
because we've lost a lot of time with the technical
Right.
difficulties. But some of the other coincidences, or should I say connections with Darlene, is that you dated somebody that she dated as well, correct?
Yes, that was Buzz Gordon. His full name was Howard Buzz Gordon.
And he was a police officer as well?
Yes, he was, Vallejo PD.
Gotcha. And so he, as far as you know, though, he only dated Darlene one time.
According to what he told me, yes, but there was a report by some interviewer that said that, oh no, they had dated for a long time and she was in love with him and they were very serious. That's a bunch of BS as far as I'm concerned, because I heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Buzz told me he went out with her one time only, and it's sad to say he called her a one-night stand.
Oh, well, it seems like she was kind of into all kinds of things during that time of her life, unfortunately.
Yes, she was. She was dating quite a few people and was supposedly in love with all of them.
And so basically you did not know Darlene directly, but you knew her through her appearances at your work, or if you attended or went to her work.
I probably waited on her. She probably knew who I was because Buzz was dating me. If she was actually in love with him, she probably knew about me.
I thought that it might be likely that she was appearing where he might be or where you were, if she was aware. If she was truly in love with him, she's probably, a little bit of a stalker.
Yeah. Well, Buzz used to come into the Coronado Inn when he was working. He would come in with George Ballard. That was his partner that he drove with.
So
and Ballard, of course, is the one that came up with Arthur Lee Allen.
If she was in love with him, it's kind of a girl tit for tat thing to do, to show up and make their appearance and try to look pretty and try to get him back. And
I mean, for all I know, if she actually knew the Zodiac, maybe she said, "Get rid of that bitch."
Anything is possible, I find, in this case.
I know.
Now, then at a later date, you were dating someone named Dawn, correct?
Yes, I dated Dawn Porter.
And was that was after Buzz?
No, it was during Buzz.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you dating Dawn, you had an interesting story about his roommate, who you believe might possibly be Honcho, or your mystery man, correct?
Right. That's exactly correct. Yes. Dawn lived with a guy that was about 5'9", 5'10", stocky, barrel-chested, curly brown hair, roundish face, glasses. He had a real odd voice. And what made me remember this particular conversation was he completely threw a fit. Dawn and I were going to go to San Francisco, And so he's telling his roommate, it's out on the front porch. He's telling his roommate, he said, well, Sandy and I have to stop by Dee's house. And I don't remember if Don said he had to pick something up from her or if he had to drop something off. I can't remember what it was, but that we had to stop by her place and do whatever it was he was doing, picking up or dropping off. And then we were going to head to San Francisco. Well, when he says, Sandy and I have to go to Dee's house, the guy flipped out and he screamed in a real weird, screechy voice, like, I told you never, ever, ever say that name ever. And that was the only reason that I remembered the name Dee. Otherwise, I couldn't, would never have remembered it. So when I read Grace Smith's book and saw that Darlene used that name and Zodiac actually called her by that name, or at least the man that she feared called her by the name Dee, I just assumed that probably was the same person. I mean, I can't say for sure because it could have been, like you said, could have been an initial for David or another Don or something like that. I don't know. But I believe that it was probably Darlene because she was involved with Don and the group in passing money. I'm saying allegedly so that I don't get sued by her family, but even her family knew that she was involved in something that had to do with phony money, and that she paid $9,500 down on the house that she got on Virginia Street, which is a lot of money, and that she was spending more money than what most of us waitresses made at that time. So it was highly suspicious, and she was dressing quite nicely. She had lost a lot of weight. I know that she was selling drugs. I found that out because I did some interviews through people that actually was at her house the night she was killed. And he said that, yes, Darlene was selling drugs, not big time, but out of her house. And that she told the people that if Dean's car was there, not to stop, because Dean had no idea what was going on. He really didn't. Yeah, he had no clue. And but she was selling marijuana. I don't know what else she sold, but I do know that her brother Leo, at the age of 14, was hooked on heroin. It's really sad, the whole family. I mean, there was like 10 children in that family. Can you imagine?
Right. Now, how did you find out that it was Dee's house? So you didn't know who Dee was when
No, I did not know who Dee was. No.
When Dawn said it. How did you
Right.
come to the realization that the house that you had gone to was actually Darlene's?
I can't say that 100% positive. All I know is that we did stop by a house, and I don't even remember what it looked like, to tell you the truth. And I've seen pictures of her house, but I can't recall it. I need to be hypnotized, actually. But we did go to her house, and he either dropped off or picked something up that we had to go to San Francisco and do something there with whatever it was.
Gotcha. So yeah, San Francisco is a huge hub for a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
So not knowing whether or not it is in fact Dee's house, you just presumed that Dee was Darlene.
Yes, exactly.
And there's really, well, I guess, I mean, if she owned that house, is there any research that supports, but the house that she owned then, right? You know what
Yeah,
her,
it
where
was 1300 Virginia Drive-in in Vallejo.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, yeah, I guess when you look back that far and recalling where you went, if you weren't the driver, sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
All right. So you did find out, though, that Dawn was arrested and convicted in a counterfeiting ring, which kind of substantiates the whole money-making thing.
Mm-hmm. He took the fall for everybody else in the group.
Oh, wow. That was awfully nice of him, but I suppose that's kind of what they do. You don't snitch, right?
He would have been killed had he snitched.
Right.
And the head guy told him that he could get him off the deal by making him look crazy. So what he did to look crazy was he filled a can. It was a Folgers can of coffee, empty can of coffee rather, with rocks in it. And he walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. He waited for the police to get almost right next to him before he drops the can into the water. course, it sinks. The police said, "What was that you just threw in the water?" He says it was $100,000 for JFK's reelection. Well, JFK had already passed away. So they figured this guy's crazy, so he went to a hospital for a short time and maybe jail for a short time, but he wasn't in jail for very long.
Huh. I don't know what type of gosh, I don't know how much time you would get for counterfeiting to know the difference. That being a federal crime, you would think would have some time behind it.
Yeah, I would like to read the court transcripts, which are in, I believe it was San Rafael.
Well, I'm going to speed through some of this other stuff real quick. Okay. You did send me an article that Pam Huckabee did an interview with, and it was an article that was written in February 2nd of 1986. Who was that article with?
The Vallejo Times-Herald.
Okay. So basically, I do find I am missing a little bit of the left-hand side of the article itself. And I'm not sure where the information was derived from, but it looks like they're describing some type of a car chase or a menacing driver that was on the tail of Darlene after she picked up Mike Mageau and basically forced them to the outskirts of town or to the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then it goes on to say that that the driver then returned, and then that's when he exited the car, opened fire.
Yes, and that's why I think that Mike actually got a look at the killer.
Well, and interestingly enough, in this article, it states that the glaring light blinded Mageau's eyes. So this individual must have also interviewed Mageau for this, because it says he could see no one. Suddenly, he heard the clink of metal against the door window frame, saw a muzzle flash and smoke erupt. He heard loud shots. This type of activity would cause most people to duck and cover. Not to look up. I mean, the last thing you're going to do is look at your perpetrator straight in the eye when he's pointing a gun at you and firing rounds.
Yes, but if he saw the guy who was parked near them that pulled, he was parked there, and Mike said to Darlene, "Do you know the guy?" And she said, "Oh, never mind." So he got a look at him at that point, and that's the car that left and came back.
Yeah, and see, I didn't see anything about him. I mean, other than what it's stating here, it says Darlene was wounded by 9 rounds. Mageau tried to escape, but the door handle was missing. He was hit in the right arm and suffered excruciating pain as the attacker walked away from the car. Before the gunman left, he looked over his shoulder, and Mageau saw his face lit by the interior light of his car. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, one has to perceive that, are they saying by the driver's interior light of the car or by the interior light of the car that they were sitting in, because their doors were open?
It was from what I understood, it was the light of the car that belonged to the shooter. Yes.
So he might have gotten a really quick glance, obviously, not the ability to sit and stare. He did say that it was a large face. He said the killer was between 26 and 30 years old, but in continued reports after that with investigators, it was determined that he wasn't really a good decision maker on someone's age, basically, like that he wasn't really capable of telling somebody's age because he didn't catch a good look at it, and of course thus was not really sure about what information he had given.
Correct.
He did say that
I saw looked 30.
He said 26 to 30 years old, but and obviously that then contradicts other statements such as the Paul Stein murder, where 35 to 45 is the age that's actually given.
Yes.
With short, curly, light brown hair and a military style brush cut. Also, it shows that let's see. This particular article talks about the killer making the phone call into the police department at 12:40 a.m. on July 5th to state that he had killed the people at Blue Rock Springs with a 9mm Luger, and that he also killed the kids, it looks like, at Lake Herman Road. But now all of a sudden, this particular tape in which he called and reported the crime is now missing.
Yeah, and from what I understand, there was no tape machine ever at that particular time in 1969.
Well, and this article says The tape of that phone call, although said to have been heard by several people, including Pam, is inexplicably missing. So a tape must have occurred if several people had heard it, including Pam.
Yes, but of course we can't believe everything that Pam says either. What is very strange about that is when I did talk to investigators, that they said there was never any taping because they didn't have a tape machine at that time.
Huh.
And even Nancy Slover said that too, because I had lunch with Nancy several times.
Right. Why do we continue to defer to her to listen to the voice? If we had a tape, we could simply compare it, right?
Yes, she has passed away, unfortunately.
Correct.
She did listen to Gaikowski's voice.
Some of the other things that Pam stated in regards to what was going on with Darlene was that that she was aware of this individual who purportedly killed her, that this person had attended parties. This person had been seen and spoken to her at, I guess, Darlene's work. Again, she was stating that Darlene was receiving these gift packages at her house, like a silver belt and a purse from Mexico. Mexico was pointed out because obviously Mexico is a theme that runs in tandem with a lot of these cases surrounding the Zodiac.
Yes.
And that, let's see, another package that Pam took from that man, she says, was wrapped in paper and was the size and shape of a bundle of money of bills, which was kind of, of solidifying, or at least it runs in tandem with what you believed about the counterfeiting scheme. It says she saw him once more on the May 24th before the murder at the painting party, as she calls it. So here we have people who believe the person who might have killed Darlene is actually making face with everybody, showing up, hanging out, partying, drinking with them, yet nobody can find this person.
Absolutely. Yes, correct. Nobody knew what his name was.
So she also commented and stated that Dean Ferrin worked as a cook for Caesar's restaurant then. Darlene was a waitress, and yet the house was paid for in cash, Pam says. She could not understand how the couple could afford it. Yes. Another time, she says, about the time I took the package from him that looked like money to me, Pam says, Darlene started paying me for babysitting in $10 and $20 bills before she was giving me quarters, which was her tip money.
Right.
So Pam believes, she says now, that Darlene saw something, maybe saw that guy kill somebody, maybe at one of the Haight-Ashbury parties she went to. It has something to do with her first husband, she believes. So,
yes.
Okay, that gives us about 5 minutes left here on this documentary.
Wow.
Let's see. Yeah, we lost a lot of time in that.
Yeah.
Now, the downside to this article is that she finishes off by saying she's read Graysmith's book 4 times. This book has really jogged my memory so much. She says I'd read 2 pages and think. I find that interesting. Nobody should be relying on Graysmith to draw their to jog their own memory, because clearly their memory should be their memory and not something that's inserted by somebody else's versions.
Yes.
That is handwriting samples, actually. I was more or less doing that to show. I meant to take those down. They weren't supposed to be in there. Those are handwriting samples of one of the suspects you thought might possibly be the Zodiac.
Oh, well, I know that he's definitely connected to my suspect.
And
I've seen them together. Yes.
Okay, so your suspect is the honcho. You believe his name might be Anthony or Tony.
Yes. I was told by more than one person that that's the name he was going by.
Okay. But Robert Hernandez was the gentleman we just saw in the picture.
The picture that you showed, I believe, was Honcho, wasn't it? The side profile one?
That is Honcho, not Robert Hernandez?
Right. The profile picture is Honcho.
You don't know that gentleman's name and nobody's been able to identify him. Is that the guy that you passed around the picture to the prostitutes, telling them to beware?
Yes.
Okay, exactly. So I had that a little confused. So your mystery man then is not a mystery. That is Robert Hernandez, is the one with the funky eye.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Hernandez doesn't have the funky eye.
No, not Robert Hernandez.
No, it's Honcho. Oh. Honcho has the funky eye.
Honcho has the funky eye. I had some things confused there. Okay.
Well, it is very confusing. I'm sorry, but yeah.
And so here we have a greeting card that was sent to you. It looks to me like somebody who knew you well, somebody who was a friend of yours, and somebody who didn't want to tell you how much they loved you and preferred to protest in an anonymous way that they had a fancy for you, correct?
Correct. And I was flattered by it, so I ended up keeping it. Yes.
Do you think that that was sent by either of Honcho or Robert Hernandez?
I would say Honcho, possibly. And the bottom lines are very odd to me, like fighting the urge to add like to his list, you know. And it was 1969 that I received that card in Napa.
And no, we are more than just no, we are more than just friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet I have no idea, you know, truly who that is.
Right.
Except that the last lines, you know, after learning a little bit about Zodiac, I thought those last lines were indicative of how he spoke formally.
Right. Well, I'm going to be looking at that handwriting too and see how that compares to other handwriting in this case to see if we can show any connection to any of the other cursive writing that we have.
Yeah, the only other cursive writing that I was able to compare to was the letter or the card that was sent to Donna Lass's sister, Mary.
Correct. That's one of the ones I had in mind, but I do have some other samples of cursive writing in this series that I believe is by the same suspect. So we'll take a look at it in combination. Now, the next writing that you received was actually this, hi, Pookie, I bet you think I'm drawing you a picture, but I'm not. I just wanted you to know that. Never mind. We're about to fly this e-passion kite, and it's got some drawings on it. And of course, this picture where you have this Zodiac symbol that appears in you said this is behind your house up the hill?
It's in front of my house up on the hill. It faces my house. And when I came around the corner, it was around Christmas time. And the first time I spotted it, it was lit up. I mean, it was huge. And so I went to the recorder's office to see if I could figure out, you know, who lived at those houses. Well, this person was very clever and put it right at the corner of 4 different properties. So I had to check out the names of the people on those 4 different properties. I did come across one, gosh darn it, I cannot think of what his last name is. But there was an Anthony, and that Anthony ended up living in Vallejo. So there may be a connection there. I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, that would be some interesting, to find out who owned those properties and who would allow somebody to come in on the property. And if they knew who put or placed that there. Were you able to talk to the homeowners?
No, I never went and talked to the homeowners. I was fearful that maybe my stalker lived in one of those homes, and I didn't want to face him face to face. I was afraid of him. But the letter that's on the left-hand side of that page,
Sandy, we're out of time now at this point. It is 7:50. I do want to thank you for being on here. We do have some more slides that we can go through, and maybe next week we can continue this and we can do it this way so that we don't have any technological issues. This seemed to have worked just fine. So we'll try and do it from that avenue next week.
All right. That's fine.
Well, I'm just going to sign off now. Tell everybody to have a wonderful week. Sorry that we were having technical difficulties. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday where we pick back up with Sandy Betts in regards to her information surrounding the Zodiac case. Everybody take care. Thank you, Sandy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.